Chances are, if you live in the United States and you're watching this video at a time when it's relevant and you happen to be somebody or know somebody, then you instinctively can figure out why my voice is hoarse as fuck right now. And I ain't talking about the pony. I create a lot of things in a lot of different places, and I also observe a ridiculous amount of other people's creativity. And it's difficult for me to really put forth a lot of like the interactions I'm having with media towards my audience. And I generally, like, as a content creator, tend to take one piece of media and zero in on it with hyper focus and go into excruciating detail about how it works or doesn't work. That has always kind of been my specialty. And as a result, choosing targets has become like an obsession. Like, it's the main thing that I have to kind of concern myself with is like, what am I actually going to be dissecting? Because I have to put so much time and effort into it that it requires there be a certain amount of attention or love that the project gets back in order to be viable. And I have not really found a viable project in like 6 years. Nonetheless, I find myself compelled to consume a tremendous amount of content, not just like looking for, hey, what am I going to talk about, but also because all of it informs my overall understanding. You know, like every single thing that I consume affects the way that I see everything else. And so there are certain things that, because I have talked about them and like talked about why they are so good in a certain level of detail, that it has created taste where like there are people in my audience who will tell me about how like their favorite things are like 9 or 10 things that I've dissected in a lot of detail about why they're good. It makes me feel really guilty because there's so many other things, oftentimes better things, that I haven't talked about because I didn't either think it was possible to like make people care, or that I just like didn't think it would be viable, you know, as a video product. Like sometimes I like something and I don't know how to explain it, or I don't think I could do it justice. Like right here, Satoshi Kon's Opus, right? Like if you haven't read this manga, it's one of the greatest things ever written. Just one of the greatest things. Everything on this, actually, this is my peak pile. I just put together this pile of peak for my last video, and I decided to use it in this one because it actually makes more sense for this video. But everything on this bucket is a, like, 200 out of 10. It's like one of the greatest things that will ever exist in the world. Revolutionary Girl Utena, I mean, I've talked about this show, but I haven't done it justice. Gozu, I have mentioned this movie many times over the years, but I don't know how to... I can't describe it without spoiling what's good about it. Like, it's a Takashi Miike film, so if you've seen any of his other films, that is enough for you to understand. You know, Boogie Pop and others, this is the single most influential work of art on me ever. And, you know, I've said that enough times that some of my audience has gone and checked it out, and you know there are people who have been like, oh, I get it, I get why Boogie Pop has influenced you so much, but I have never made a video that just properly explains it because I don't know how. Serial Experiments Lane I've talked about in some of my least popular videos that I've ever made. You know, I've actually never seen In This Corner of the World, but it's signed by Masao Maruyama because I saw him at the end of his autograph signing, and you know, I'm playing the memory back in my head. I don't know how to describe the feelings of meeting Masao Maruyama and getting his signature on this movie, not because I had seen the movie, I haven't, but because I knew how hard he worked to get this movie made. It was like a passion project for him as a producer to get this made, knowing that like no one was probably gonna see it, but it needed to exist, you know? So these are all peak. Mayoko Ano, that's Hideaki Anno's wife. Hunter Thompson, you know, one of my biggest influences. The Sky Crawlers. the best Mamoru Oshii film? Maybe? Other than Ghost in the Shell? Nazca, The Valley of the Wind? The manga? If you haven't read the manga, punch yourself in the fucking head. If you haven't read the Akira manga, knock your head the rest of the way around. Okay, enough about the peak pile. I think you understand. So, there was a period of time where I had a patron-exclusive podcast called The 2 Weeks Review, where I would basically just go back through everything I experienced in the previous 2 weeks and give it a short review. I've done similar things throughout my life. I had, as a blogger in the early 2010s, a series where I did something similar, just like every month did a catch-up on everything I had experienced in that time. And sometimes I don't really find anything that interesting for a while. Like sometimes I'm just working on a project myself for 2 weeks, and so it might be that I didn't engage with anything other than that one thing, and that I don't want to talk about it until there's a video pretext. So it's not something I can really do consistently, so much as that occasionally, there's just like a brick of time where so much has happened that I feel like if I don't talk about it, we're not even in the same world anymore, in the same sense that like you and I are not in the same world really until you've at least consumed some of this shit, like Electric Dragon 80,000 volts, I don't know that this will change your understanding of reality necessarily, but this is how I got into noise music, really, and it's just a lot of fucking fun. Look at this shit. But my point is that as I go along consuming media, I extract quite a bit from it. And our creators fans who are very bored by this video so far, hearing the word extract, going, wait, what? Are we in? Are we still in? No, they probably skipped to a time code, if we're being honest. There is a lot to extract from the experience of seeing media. And for me, I don't really have like a super broad range of like places that I go to get my media. YouTube is my biggest one. I watch more YouTube than most people by far, I'm sure of it. I also listen to more music than most people by far, I'm sure of it. Currently, I use YouTube Music as my platform because I'm a YouTuber. It makes sense for me to do that. Outside of consuming a lot of YouTube videos and a lot of music, I also use Blue Sky very heavily, and I mostly follow illustrative artists on Blue Sky. So I see tons and tons and tons and tons of illustrative art, and also just funny, pithy comments or political things, stuff that's going on, especially in the trans world, in the gay community. My YouTube is much more black, I will also mention, than it is gay, because, trans content on YouTube is very onboarding focused, and I understand why that is, but I don't think the trans community is really ready for the deeper conversations that I would like to have, and we're getting there. We're getting closer, but, my reckoning will come deep, and we're not the ones I need to be reckoning with right now, I don't think. But I'm more so trying to learn about how the trans community can be more like the black community when it comes to organizing, disseminating information, creating a sense of cultural identity and a sense of morals that are, beheld by at least people who want to consider themselves as a part of the group, whether that really includes even a majority of people who are actually in the group. Also, because I am myself a rapper who is putting out music all the time on trialofthegoldenwitch.bandcamp.com. I hopefully edited that on screen, and that's why I did this with my hand. But I don't know that it would come on in like a sweeping motion. It just looks cool to Now there's text. I mostly listen to rap and hip hop music, and so a lot of the videos that I watch are also about hip hop and rap music. And since most hip hop and rap music is about the experience of being in the black community, I also end up consuming a ton of political content about being in the black community, which is highly, highly edifying towards the experience of being in the gay community, even as a white person, especially currently, where the same stuff that's been happening to black people for decades is now being done directly to gay communities in the United States, lesbian moms getting shot in the face. And yeah, a lot of what I've been seeing on Instagram, another platform that I'm heavily on, is just ICE brutality. Like, my Insta feed has turned into nothing but watching ICE terrorize the population of gay cities in the United States. So, yeah. America's like literally at war with itself. There is a civil war going on between woke America, I guess, and evil America. Propagated obviously by evil America. Woke America is just doing its thing, producing the sharpest decline in murder rate in history last year. And meanwhile, the escalation of violence from the state is out of control. And it's not just localized to America. Obviously, Trump's terrorizing Venezuela. He's terrorizing Greenland and Denmark by way of Greenland, and the whole EU and Canada and Mexico. And the UN is opening their own private investigation into the murder of Renee Good because he's trying to keep a cover up for the fucking literal murderer, Jonathan Ross. There's this great book called Discipline and Punish by Michael Foucault. I actually loaned to a friend recently because I couldn't get through it. It was too difficult. And so I discussed it with them. But, like, what the book is basically about is that corporal punishment, like physical punishment, was more meaningful and also, like, in a weird way, left you off better than the sort of soul punishment that is imprisonment, right? Because when you put someone in prison, essentially, like, what you are doing is removing them from society, and therefore they do not form a better relationship with society. They form a worse relationship with society. And when they're released back into it, they're even less, knowledgeable how to participate normally inside of society. Whereas, like, say, for instance, back in the day when if you stole something, you would get your pinky finger chopped off. Like, most of us consider, like, the experience of that pain to be so unconscionable, and the thought of, like, losing a part of yourself to be so unconscionable, that it's hard for us to think of that as a better thing than, like, spending 5 years in prison. But if you really think about it, like, if someone cuts off your pinky for stealing, probably, you're fucking way less likely to do that again, because that was a horrible experience that you remember every time you look at your hand. But also, like, you are now still in society. Like, everybody knows you've paid penance, and they might look at you different because they know that you've been a thief. But, like, if you lose a second finger, the suspicion level goes even higher, right? Like, there's such a clear system of, like it just is more, like, humanely rational to imagine continuing life with one less finger and, like, the ability to move through society than actually just being transposed into a place where you are now just surrounded by every type of criminal in a totally different space, has nothing to do with the way the rest of the world operates, and just, like, left out there, for years, and then brought back into a totally changed world. So I don't know how much I agree with, what Foucault was saying in this book, but it is really fascinating, especially when I compare it against Camus' The Stranger, which was a book I read in my early 20s that had a really profound effect on me because it's about just basically being a person who has like such a disaffected disposition that you don't really understand why other people have the morality that they have. And essentially the way this book ends is that the main character who kills a guy, basically he kills a guy who he thinks is trying to kill a friend of his. And when he's on trial, he is put away because of the fact that people had seen that he didn't cry at his mother's funeral. And he's so perplexed by this, that at the end of the book, as he's like kind of falling apart in jail, like, knowing he's going to be executed, he's like, where did I go wrong? And he concludes that what had made him different from everyone else was that he never attended public executions. He never saw, what happens, like the consequences. And so he didn't feel that, that connection to everyone else. And I found that really fascinating. And then I understood it better reading Foucault's description of being drawn and quartered. When you're drawn and quartered is when they would tie each of your limbs with a rope to a different horse, and those horses are running off in 4 different directions. But in order to loosen your limbs up, they also would like cut away at your shoulders and at your legs, for assumably tens of minutes while you're screaming in agony before these horses rip you to shreds. It is the most gruesome display imaginable. And when you think like, oh God, could that happen to me? Then it's like, I would never want that to be a thing. But then imagine like someone who has done something so unconscionable and in such a way that everyone has seen it and everyone has the same feelings about this person, that they should no longer exist, that like something horrible needs to happen to people like this so that other people will never do this. And if you have someone in your head that you're imagining like, I don't know that I would want to see a person be drawn and quartered, because that sounds like a awful fucking experience of seeing that. But at the same time, would it give you that feeling of resignation that like, surely y'all motherfuckers would not try this again, So, drawing and quartering, I think it's a bit extreme, right? It's a bit extreme of a measure. Although there are some people I can definitely imagine it happening to and being like, okay, yeah, that guy deserved that. At this point, we've all seen this type of stuff simulated anyways. If you've watched like Game of Thrones or The Boys or whatever, like you vaguely have already experienced seeing this shit. You just, have a level of disconnect of knowing how that was faked on some level. But I do think that there is like, there's tried and true stuff that even if it's not like as violent, like as Americans, it's we have a bizarre country because people independently have like a fuck around and find out mentality of like, if you were ever to touch me, I would destroy you. That's like the way Americans seem to think. But like at the same time, we are so posh about the thought of anyone touching anyone that it's like hyper illegal, like it's there's all these legal systems in place to like make it so that if you were to just like hit someone because they deserve it, you're gonna be in trouble. It's kind of like the punching Nazis conundrum, right? Like, should it be illegal to punch a Nazi? Should it be illegal to hit someone if they have said enough words that mean enough, that that incite violence? Like, if that is, it not self-defense to like present the possibility of violence in response to saying a combination of words that could lead to violence against yourself? And keep in mind that, like, when we talk about American free speech, we're talking about the government, right? Like, the government allows you to say whatever you want. But does that mean that everyone should have to allow you to say whatever you want? Or should you not be allowed to hit someone because they said the wrong words to you? You know, there should be a level of accountability we're all expected to take for the language that we use. I feel like that's obvious. The talk shit, get hit principle, it simply is rooted in biology, in like, if you really mean those things you're saying about me, I need to stop you, before you continue saying those things. And there are ways to do that physically. So, I don't know. At the very least, I think tarring and feathering needs to make a dramatic comeback. If you've never heard of tarring and feathering, this is one that they taught us about in elementary school. So I know this is truly patriotic, all right? This is as patriotic as anything gets, is that in the English colonies, before even the foundation of the United States, before we even became America, but when we were on the way there, and we were first getting upset at the Brits for taxing us too much, they would take the debt collectors out of their homes, cover them in hot tar, and then throw a bunch of feathers on them and make them run around town as a chicken man covered in feathers, having horrible tar experience. And that sounds hilarious, deserved, like it would raise community spirits, and like it would send a message, teach a lesson, also destabilize the power of the people who are holding down your community, which is how we created a revolution in America. It exists because of this. So basically, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it should be legal to, if someone is terrorizing your community, to tag their house with the word terrorist. That should be legal. That should be, like, if someone's going to psychological warfare with their community, the community should have the legally protected right to react with psychological warfare against the enemy. So I guess that's most of what I have to say about the ICE situation. Those guys, they're the worst humans in the world. If you're associated with someone who's in ICE, I recommend making their life so miserable that they quit ICE. Like, obviously, these people are miserable. That's why they joined this. Like, they're already thinking, like, well, society hates me. I'm hateable. I'm a bad person. These people will let me be a bad person. They'll sanction my badness, And so it's not like you're going to convince them, oh, you're a bad person, you need to leave ICE. You just have to make them miserable. And I don't mean like emotionally miserable. I mean like literally their life has to suck so much that they're like, wow, I would rather fucking move to another country and be a new person, because living in America is impossible now that I have been outed as an ICE member. That's how it should be in a good and just United States of America. I say this as someone running for president in 2028. I remind you once again, vote for Trixie Stork. I'll fix all this shit. That's my campaign slogan. I'll fix all this shit. I just put down a Costco hot dog, and I feel like I'm seeing the face of God in my tapestry. I keep pausing this Doechii documentary called War Doechii by Casavelli, highly recommended, in between when I cut my clips. And I've been quite enjoying getting to see more Doechii content to start off 2026. She pretty much absconded to go on a world tour through much of 2025, which I was in no position whatsoever to afford to go see, even though I'm very plugged in as part of the Doechii stan culture. So of course I knew when tickets were on sale and that I was not going to be able to get them, and they sold out fast. God damn. did that tour sell out fast. And she also ended up opening for the GNX tour in Australia and stuff. So, yeah, she was basically touring all year off the strength of her incredible 2024. And she had a couple of singles, but 2025 was nonetheless an amazing year for music. I already have a video on Nova's music channel, Nova Loves Music, about all of the music that I recommend from last year. Doechii's single Nosebleeds is in there, but there was a ton of amazing music last year. Please watch that video. Please check out all that music. My favorite album of last year, Cleo Reed's Country. I made an AMV for my favorite song on that album, Always the Horse, Never the Jockey, set to Uma Musume, the movie. No, I have not actually seen this movie. I just knew that it would fit the song ever since I first heard the song, and I had a vision in my head of what an Uma Musume AMV to this song would look like based on my understanding of the movie from seeing Versus Wolves talk about it. And so I just downloaded the movie, found the scenes that were what I thought they were, and put them in. Yeah, but it's a fun AMV. I could not get it onto YouTube, so I'll link it in the description. But yeah, I'm expecting Doechii to basically dominate the conversation for at least the first half of the year around her music, because she released a single right at the end of last year, very catchy, very addictive, using SZA as the feature for the hook, Girl Get Up. It's about as Doechii as a song could get. It is like the most, yes, she's back, like Doechii du jour, yes, some delicious Doechii to get us, get our appetites whetted for, whatever else she has in store for us. But it is absolutely a, let me summarize this last year while I've been on the road. I see what y'all have been saying about me while I've been gone, and I'm back, and I'm sorting shit out a little bit before we go into the real messages I've got on this album. But I want to get all the incidentals out of the way. That's kind of how the song feels. And in the process, she set this streamer called Aiden Ross into a frenzy, and it created a whole embattlement online where basically a lot of people were telling him, you can't talk about her that way, because he was being, ridiculous. The stuff he was saying was absolutely insane. And so this led to, simultaneously, I got a lot of great Doechii content, people talking about her again, just, getting hype about the fact that she is in fact back, reminding everyone the story of what was going on when we previously were, following her narrative. She's also, I think, up for a Grammy for Best Music Video for Anxiety, which was a phenomenal music video, and I will not at all be surprised if she wins that, even if it's just so that the Grammys have an excuse to keep Doechii in the conversation and then give her probably another Grammy next year, unless somebody else puts out a better album. But yeah, aside from all the great Doechii content, this also led to a lot of content about Aiden Ross, and, some of that stuff's kind of funny, but mostly it's so cringeworthy having to even interface with that guy's existence. If it really affects the bottom line and makes him, less culturally relevant, that's cool. I don't know how effective it really is. This is the main reason that I've been kind of divided when it comes to, making content about bad content, which is something that, I sort of built my career on, mostly talking shit about bad anime. Unfortunately, anime is it feels like punching down, and it's not in the sense that I'm a broke person, it's not like I'm really punching down to beat up on anime, but I think about the animators individually, aside from that, they're just people with a job, they're not working on, they didn't invent the fucking thing, when I talk shit about Sword Art Online, I'm really it's about Reki Kawahara, it's not about the individual animators on the show, but those people are kind of implicated in that. If you're shitting on an anime, and especially if you're shitting on it for being kind of jank looking, I'm usually blaming the company for putting something together that they couldn't really afford to make good. But at the end of the day, I am basically saying, hey, all these low-level animators that make like no money, you're not doing that great of a job. And it's like, yeah, well, okay, they're not living that great of a life either. So it feels weird to beat up on bad anime as compared to, say, beating up on a bad YouTube video where I know that's just like a guy or a small team who sucks, and who is probably themselves punching down on a piece of media that I could then, prevent them from. I like that kind of content and I guess content police type stuff. I like pack out videos, but I don't know who to target. And people often say the critical drinker, like make more videos about how much he sucks. And I did one time that like people liked it and it did okay. It didn't do like stellar numbers or anything, but it took a lot of time. And mostly I realized like none of that guy's audience would give a fuck at all. Like they don't care that he's not good at making reviews. There's nothing you could say about the Critical Drinker's videos that is not going to be like something that even probably his fans would agree with. They're like, yeah, it's just not that deep. That's their take would be it's not his point of existence is to be the it's not that deep type of a reviewer. Like going to the shallowest depth possible because that's what some people want there to be. They want it to be what it is obviously seems like on the surface. They want to judge books by the cover. He is the judge the book by the cover reviewer. He tells people what they already think they want to hear about the thing before they even encounter it. So that is a viable market. It's a terrible thing, but it's not like, how do I make people veer away from that? I don't think that telling them that what they like is bad will convince them to stop watching it. I think that you just have to make something good that they would rather watch. And sometimes that means making something that is deep but not self-evidentially. I think that a lot of the times, take something like Gurren Lagann. Like the reason that show was so effective with its audience, especially in the United States, where it's was a really huge hit as far as relatively obscure mecha anime from 2007 go. It was because it feels broad and feels surface and feels like just obvious on the face of it what's good about it and what's awesome about it. But when you unpack it, when you peel back the layers, you keep finding depth. You keep finding that there is a little bit more to it, that there's historical precedent, that it's referencing all these other stories, that it's like it is built from a depth of understanding. And so it just also on that shallow flare level is appealing. And I think there are, certain things I could criticize about that show. I do think it's kind of like dated in terms of, I don't think it would hit with the same people the same way today, but I think that is the type of storytelling that gets people to stop watching bad stuff. And there's a lot of people who won't be able to recognize that Gurren Lagann is good, and they'll think, oh, that's trash, and this other thing I like is actually deep. But like, some people need the surface to not be glossy. Like, they won't believe it's deep unless it is posturing as deep, unless the surface level says you can't see anything till you go deeper. That's what means deep to some people. But really, like, when you can do deep that tricks you into thinking it's shallow, I think that's the stuff that tends to hit the hardest, and again, pull people out of purely shallow content. It's why Kendrick beat Drake. It's that on the surface, certified lover boy, certified pedophile, wop, 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 dot, fuck him up. It's just funny, but then you get to let me put y'all on game, and he's breaking down the whole fucking history of the slave trade in Atlanta. Like, so that's a perfect example of shallow on the surface, deep when you look into it. And Drake had no depth. He had some shiny surface stuff that is kind of cool, but then as soon as you dive in, you're like, wait, actually, this is terrible, Since I've been talking about America and about things that are shiny on the surface and have a depth to them, Marty Supreme. I'll jump into it. This movie, if you've seen the other movies by the Safdie brothers, Good Time and uh, Uncut Gems, this is basically the same movie. It's somehow the same movie as both of those movies, but with a different tension in that it trends towards comedy and levity, whereas those films trend towards dark tension. And they're all tense. They're very similar. Like structurally, they're very similar in terms of who is the main character, what are they dealing with, what is their situation. But Marty Supreme has more of an absurdity to it, more of a lightheartedness, a little bit more of that Coen brothers kind of like tongue-in-cheekiness to it than what you would have gotten. And granted, this is only one Safdie. I'm not making the Coen brothers comparison because of it being a pair of brothers before somebody says that. Like, this was just one Safdie who made this one, but it is almost identical to the first two movies, so I guess that's just his style for the most part. And this is a film with Timothy. It's a film that stars Timothée Chalamet. I cannot look at him without thinking about Timothée. Lucky Star fans understand. And yeah, he's really solid. Carries the movie as this like charismatic, out of control. I guess we'll call him a social gambler, like not just purely a gambler because he's usually setting up rigged gambling. He's somebody who, I guess a scammer would be the appropriate phrase, a grifter, but one with an unmistakable real talent and real charisma, like a guy who you would want to hang out with and be friends with and be around, if not for the fact that he is going to take advantage of you on the back end of that in an underhanded way. You're going to think you were just having a good time, but actually it probably cost you more than you bargained for. And he is also costing himself more than he bargains for by doing all the things he does. And so it's sort of a like a debt accumulation thriller, a film about a person who keeps like promising things to people that he obviously is not going to be able to deliver on unless he were somehow to just crack and become a different person than he is. And it's not even that he doesn't have opportunities towards being like highly successful. It's just that he's so impatient about it and so impudent about it that all of his methodologies end up it's always like, well, if you let me do this now, then I'll be able to pay it off big time later. And it's like, well, also you'd be able to pay me off if you just worked slowly and and did things at a regular pace. And since there's no guarantee that you will succeed later, it feels like you're fucking me over. And that's kind of every character's position on this guy in the movie. So ultimately, what it is a film about is being humbled to your circumstances and like realizing that if you keep setting up promises, if you keep making promises you can't keep, eventually you will be humbled by your circumstances. Like if you don't do it yourself, it's going to happen to you. And that's most of what the movie is it never really comes from him. It never really comes from within. It's that circumstances force him to capitulate, to lower his head and to admit defeat and survive in the way that you have to. I don't want to spoil the ending of the movie. It's a fun movie. It's got Tyler the Creator in it through like the midsection, and that's probably the most like just whimsical and exciting part that I've seen people describe this movie as like an epic, and I hate using that word to apply to a movie like this because it's just not. It takes place over 9 months very pointedly, and like it's only so many locations. It is like there's New York, Japan, and I guess the countryside of New York or New Jersey or something are the settings of the film, but it moves at a very breakneck pace and it goes for a very long time. So it's a movie that you feel like really immersed in and sort of lost in. and it's got all these character threads and plot threads that will kind of, something will be set up and then forgotten about for a really long time, and then finally it comes back in. And at the very end, you're kind of left like, damn, did we actually see everything get wrapped up? Like, you kind of run back through it all in your head and be like, where did that character end up? Where did this one? Oh, yeah. I do think it maybe could have done a little bit more with some of the characters, like just to give them more closure, but maybe that wasn't the point. It's more so about just like this freewheeling, constantness of things coming in and out of this guy's life. But, while it was overall like just a fun and engaging movie, I think it connected with me mostly in the sense that it hit me where I'm at, in that being humble and like accepting things as they are, and that they're only going to change at the rate that like they can, is something I have to come to terms with, because I have this similar mentality to Marty of like, well, if I just had a breakthrough, it would fix everything. And I think a lot of Americans live their lives in that state of like, I'm one like lottery ticket away, or I'm one good gamble away, I'm one YouTube video that goes viral away. And when you've had a big hit, you're more likely to double down on that. Like Marty himself is really good at ping pong, and he's gambling on the idea that people will care about it because he's really good at it. But he's not good at building the infrastructure for why people engage with it, like beyond that he's good. Like he wants ping pong to be a celebration of how good he is at ping pong, and that's why it would be something people care about. And it just isn't. Like what people care about is more the identity politics of being America versus Japan. And when he loses to Japan, it basically ends ping pong being anything that anyone will ever care about in the United States. So like he has to like live in that reality, and he can't, and that's what a lot of the movie is about. I kind of spoiled the first third of it, but it's literally based on history. So there's a dramatic irony very early into the movie where Marty is talking to his boss, and he says something like, ping pong's gonna be as big in America as like baseball or some shit like that, some major sport. And I just like laughed because the film is set in the 50s, and we all know ping pong is not at all a thing in the United States. Still, nobody gives a fuck about ping pong. So, yeah, the film lets you know right away what it's about to do to this guy as soon as you meet him, and then you're just kind of watching that unfold. And yeah, for me, it was relatable in that sense of like, I have this feeling that, well, my content is really, really good. So surely surely just making something really good and people are going to come see it. And it's like, but it's not just about being really good. It's about being relevant. It's about being what people are looking for in that moment. It's about, what does your audience actually want, or what does the world want? What really is there. And like, there is a level where you have to be ambitious, and you have to say, I'm going to make this thing possible, but you have to be also like prudent and willing to work with people. Like if people are telling you what they need from you and you're not giving it to them because you're telling them they're wrong, it's just going to be harder, and that's what Marty's doing throughout the whole movie. Is people are telling him like, well, look, if you change this and that behavior, or if you just wait a little bit, then you can have a shot. And he just won't. He refuses to accept that he has to be patient, has to be humble until it's beaten into him. And that's where I've kind of been at in life, is like, oh, I can't just like generate a certain amount of income, or like sell for a long time I had it in my head that like I have all this stuff that I own that's worth some money, not necessarily the stuff behind me, this is the stuff I want to keep, but I have a lot of stuff, and I always had this mentality of like, well, at some point I'll just sell all this stuff, and then I'll have some money that I could reinvest into something. It's not that easy to sell your stuff, like actually, there's a whole industry dedicated to how hard it is to sell stuff called marketing. Like it's the entire. When you build a store, a brick and mortar store, it's like because you have like plans and inventory, and like you understand stock, you understand what you know you can't just say like I'm gonna sell all my things, and like you can just wholesale your whole collection to someone. You're not gonna get what it's worth. You're not gonna get its value. But at the same time, you have to spend money to build up an infrastructure in order to be moving commerce through it. And so, really, when you think about a job, you shouldn't be thinking about a break. You shouldn't be thinking about this is a way to make money towards another ends. It is what it is. You do the thing to do the thing, to have a job. Like it's not about, oh, I'm going to have this job and then I'm going to put that money into the stock market and then I won't have to have a job again. That might be possible if you really, really, really study the stock market. But at that point, that's a job. Like there's no job that's not a job. There's no way to like have money and it wasn't a job to get there. Like it's some type of a job. But if your jobs are illegal jobs, if your jobs are, are skits, like in Marty's case, like it catches up to you. It's not in the long run as worthwhile as simply having kept your head down and done the thing that works, and it's not that there's no room for, revolutionaries. There absolutely is. But if your revolution is everyone needs to pay attention to me, good luck. An interesting part of my self-humbling process has been my addiction, if you will, to arc raiders. I talked a bit about arc raiders in my last video, and I'm not going to go over the stuff that I talked about in that video. You will be killed, for anybody who doesn't remember what video was my last video. And the game is really fascinating in many ways. It's kind of the game of my dreams. And I almost mean that literally, not just because since playing it, it has shown up in my dreams. That's normal. But before this game, if you asked me what is my favorite video game, I would have answered Caravan SandWitch. Caravan SandWitch was an indie game that came out towards the end of 2024. Right? It's 2026 now, right? Oh, God, I can't even fucking keep track of the year anymore. I reviewed it over on the Bomber Girl Vera channel, another of my personalities. Bomber Girl is also my Steam handle if you're trying to find me on Arc Raiders or buy me something on my wish list. I can't ever afford video games. It's the main reason I haven't tried to do more indie game coverage is I want to be able to pay for the games, and I can't. I have no fucking money. But Caravan SandWitch was a rare exception of a game that the day that it hit the Steam page, like it came out and Steam was like, new games, Caravan SandWitch, spelled WITCH. And I went, oh, I'm buying that. Like, I didn't even need to really see more than the image. Like, it was just, I saw the character, what the character design looked like, what the aesthetic looked like, and the name. And I was like, yeah, of course, Caravan SandWitch, that's just me. That's who I am. I am the Caravan SandWitch. What are you talking about? Driving around the desert's my favorite thing to do. So Caravan SandWitch is this absolutely gorgeous, story-driven game where you run around this desert sort of zone on a planet far, far away from Earth that this hyper mega corporation of like an incomprehensible scale, basically like a corporate version of one of the two Legend of the Galactic Heroes factions. Like that level of scale of control, or I guess something comparable to like Dune or Warhammer 40K. Like an incomprehensibly massive universe of control. And this was a mining planet that they had for a while, and then they eventually left. And there are people who are still there who have a small community, and they're kind of hoping that they will not simply be wiped out when this corporation tries to cover up something that they didn't want people to know about this planet or something like that. And so you are basically just rummaging through the remains of the projects that these, mining corporations were doing on the planet, and trying to find certain you're trying to basically solve a mystery about your sister who went missing. Like the actual like forward plot of the game is like, hey, your sister went missing at some point and you're trying to figure out what happened. But um the answer to that question reveals all kinds of other things about the world and the circumstances of the game. But most of what the game consists of is just like looting, essentially, these mega structures in the middle of the desert and driving around in a van. And looting megastructures in a desert, especially a South European desert, because Caravan SandWitch is set in the south of France and Ark Raiders is set in the south of Italy. They're very similar. If you look at Caravan SandWich's spaceport level and then you look at Ark Raiders' spaceport level, you're like, that's the same spaceport. It's got the same fucking obnoxious having to run all the way down and then go over and then go all the way up the other side to get around it. I know that Ark Raiders' spaceport existed in like 2020 because this game's been in development forever. It was originally more of a Helldivers 2 type of a game, but about fighting giant robots, and they couldn't figure out how to make that consistently engaging enough, so they retooled it to be more of an extraction shooter that is more about collecting loot and optional enemy encounters. It still has giant robot battles, but that's not the main focus, and it also has built-in PvP. It sorts you sort of by how friendly you are, and so you don't have as much PvP if you consistently avoid it. But there is still always on PvP, and it's something you have to keep in mind, especially when you're in like giant robot fighting battles. So obviously, this is a type of a setting that I'm very attracted to. Not only do I love the desert, and I love games that just let you kind of run around in open space, especially a more natural space. Like, there's lots of open world games that, like stuff like GTA, that take place in the city that never interested me as much because most of the city just feels the same to me. It's just like, okay, buildings, 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 whatever. But it's cool when there's like more of an integration of an interesting type of a building and also some wilderness, And so like my husband Bird had actually bought Ark Raiders initially. I had never even like really heard of this game. He bought it like a few days before Christmas and had started playing it, and I took an interest in it just because I thought it looked so much like Caravan SandWitch. And it got me thinking about like what is it about this type of a setting that's so attractive to me, because I also am a huge Halo fan from back in the day, which when I really thought about it has similar type of like labyrinthine mega structures as its level design. I also, really enjoyed elements of The Last of Us, even though I'm not the biggest fan of that game. I think that the most fun parts are just kind of like walking around the post-apocalyptic Earth, and it's because I love exploring in real life, but there's most places that are interesting you can't go. Like when you go to like a national park or something, that's really cool because it's like they set aside this natural wonder to be something you can go explore and spend some time with, and like that it's like allowed. But there's so many spaces in the world where it's like this is just 12 acres of private land. Is it interesting land? I don't know. I can't explore it, Or here's a gigantic mega complex, a dam or a bridge, like, bridge tunnel. Like here we have a lot of bridge tunnels in Virginia, and I have been inside of one of them as a kid because it was either the Cub Scouts or a school trip. But it was super interesting, or a Navy ship. Like I got to visit one of those as a kid. All of these are crazy locations to actually be in because they're so unique and, what's the word I want? Meticulously crafted to suit very specific purposes. And like there are lots of video games that let you explore that type of thing, like say I keep thinking of GoldenEye as like a game that lets you go around a ship, but also like Uncharted, or say Call of Duty, where they have levels where you're going through like a large elaborate place, but you're not usually just at liberty to just kind of explore it. There's I guess what I'm trying to say is that I don't feel like there's been a lot of games that combine the open world nature of something like a GTA, where you really truly feel like you can just kind of fuck around and do whatever you want, with the mega structure level design of a Halo or a Call of Duty. That, even though Halo like did kind of famously have a lot of open space for you to run around, you're not really trying to run all the way back through the levels. There's nothing back there. Like nothing new spawns in behind you when you go back all the I have done this, I've gone all the way back through the levels in Halo. There's nothing there. It's pointless. In Arc Raiders, you spawn into a gigantic map. It's like a square mile, and there's always a combination of just like an epic terrain that in itself is interesting to explore, but then a bunch of epic structures that are, interrelated in some way. So one level is a dam, one level is a buried city, one level is called the Blue Gate, which is basically like this really complicated underground system of tunnels, and then the surface above them, on which is built like a little town and stuff. You've got Stella Montis, which is supposed to be like a habitat for humanity, so it's just like this massive fucking structure. And the spaceport, which is a spaceport. And so each of these levels, like, it would take hours to find everything inside of one of these levels. But the point of the game is not find everything inside of the levels. The point of the game is that you get loaded into a level and you have like 20-30 minutes to gather as much shit as you can and get out of the level safely. You can do this without fighting anything if you're playing really stealthily. Fighting has certain benefits. There's a lot of feats that you can earn, especially for killing Ark, that will, let you progress in certain ways, but most of the progression is cosmetic. It's literally like you can get a new outfit for your character, you can get a new emote or whatever, and that stuff is fun and definitely compels you towards play. But in terms of like what will make the game easier or better, it's really just a matter of what are you trying to do, though. Like, if your goal is I want to take out the biggest enemies, or I want to progress the quest lines, then like you will have to accomplish certain specific things. But the game does not tell you you have to do anything, really. It just says like, hey, here you are, you're in a space for 20-30 minutes, figure it out, get out of here alive. If you don't live, you still gain experience points. You still gain like a little bit. You will lose whatever you were carrying on you, but you always are capable to just bring in a free loadout anyways. Like, the game never makes itself unplayable for you. So, like, you could literally be so bad that you died every single round, or let's say that you just spawned in and tried to live to the end of every round. Because if you make it to the end and you don't get into an elevator, you die, right? So you could just spawn in, spend fucking half an hour running around the map, die, and do that again, and that can be the game. And it wouldn't be that different from Caravan SandWitch, just without the story or the car, But... And I would love if they added some kind of vehicles into this game. I think there's a lot of room to do some fun vehicle type stuff. I'm sure it would be hard to balance. I'm sure it's going to be a while, but I'd love to see it, especially because the maps are just enormous. I don't know what kind of vehicle, maybe like a motorcycle or something, but I definitely think something fun could be done. And it would obviously have to be like really hard. Like, it would have to be, you'd have to gather like 3 batteries from different parts of the map or something, and you could fucking ride a motorbike up a matriarch or whatever, but it would be really funny. Aside from vehicles, though, I mean, the game is really satisfying just to get around anyways, and especially as you level up your skills and everything, then, the basic movement becomes easier, and it's a fun game to just be in and explore, and the combat feels good. So even if if you do want to engage with combat, it feels amazing. And so, like, for me as a fan of Caravan SandWitch, that game, aside from fulfilling my desire to run around a bunch of mega structures and just take in the world, also had a really great story. And that's kind of missing from Arc Raiders, which makes it harder for me to say, oh, well, this is my favorite game, except that Arc Raiders is addicting. It is a game that I want to pick up again and again and again, because it does have progression systems, it does have combat, it does have like hard reasons to come back, but more than any of that by far, it's multiplayer. That's by far the biggest thing. I wouldn't be playing it if it was just me by myself, but it's me and my husband, and he loves the game. And so the two of us playing together and going through the progression tree together, this is something I've been dying to have, because my husband plays games all the time. It's like his main thing. He's a gamer. So when we first got together, we were playing a little bit of Apex Legends together. But for me, that game is like, it was fun to play with him and under no other circumstances. And, I think he probably started playing Borderlands 3 and just kind of, we didn't end up playing Apex for a while. And then most recently, he was playing Borderlands 4, so. And when he gets into multiplayer games, it's usually like it had been Overwatch 2, which I played with him for a bit, but again, I'm just not that into Overwatch. Marvel Rivals, I've played a little bit. Marvel Zombies was kind of fun. We were playing Marvel Zombies like right before Arc Raiders, and so that kind of got me set back up into the mindset of like playing a multiplayer game online. But I could not have imagined playing that game for more than 2 or 3 days tops, which is about how long it took to cap Marvel Rivals Zombies anyways. But like backpacking off of that into Arc Raiders, it was like, oh my god, this is actually the one. Like, this is everything that I love about playing like Phantasy Star Online with somebody else, where it's, you're teamed up against the enemies, you're exploring the levels, you're, gathering items, item-based progression more so than level-based progression. Like, going up in level doesn't mean that much in Arc Raiders, but continuing to economically grow and get access to better and better items because you're updating your crafting benches, and you're combining items and doing all this stuff to like basically economically build your character, is really satisfying. And it's also easy. Like, there's other games that are like Arc Raiders in terms of how they function, but they're not easy or fun. This one's easy and fun, and it's got a really great sense of progression. And like, because I could immediately tell what it was kind of like, what would be the most efficient way to get like really rich in the game, I just have played it that way, where I've played cautiously, and maybe not the most fun way you could play, but I'm also not the most experienced gamer who's like going in trying to like, all right, I'm gonna fucking throw a bunch of grenades, and or I'm gonna like try to PvP. Like, I'm playing cautiously with a focus on exploration, with a focus on growing my character, and so getting the items I need, getting to extract safely, and then once I have this tremendous arsenal, then it's not as scary to go into the big battles, because even if I do lose everything, I still have way more. Alright, it looks like my throat is completely giving up on me. I've done as much talking as being sick is going to allow. I'm sorry that you had to hear me sounding like this, but I gotta talk. It's the only way I can really get my thoughts and feelings out there and connect with other people. I wanted the experience of a type of video game that you come back to every day, and you make slow progress, and you make it a part of your life, and you're not trying to just like blast through the whole thing in a weekend, because that's usually how I do everything. Everything I do is always like, oh, I need to get it done. I need to get it done as soon as possible. It needs to be immediate. And I have a real difficulty of keeping something going. I've got my Turn A Gundam series. I took a break from it, partly for the holidays, partly out of getting sick, and partly out of getting addicted to Arc Raiders. But it should have come back before this video came out. So if you go to that, that is also me trying to humble myself to anime, to be like, the reason anime comes out once per week is that is a reasonable schedule to do a thing at, and like, so it is very reasonable for me to make a Turn A Gundam video every week, even though they're not profitable right now, like, as a thing to just like develop a habit of like, this isn't a thing you're rushing through, it's a thing you're doing deliberately over time. That's the kind of thing I'm trying to build with myself. So I also have been trying to make sure that my releases come out in a way that each one is very relevant. It's spaced out. It's not just me like, oh, I had an idea and now a video has to come out. Like, I'm more likely to record something and hold on to it and be like, okay, let's release this when it needs to come out, when people will actually care or be ready for it or be ready to pay attention to it, you know? So hopefully I accomplished all of that with this video. Thanks again for watching. And stay subscribed and send me Cash App, Venmo, keep the lights on. Hey, it's Trixie forever. I made this after filming the rest of the video, but I thought this is a good video to put this in. My 2026 predictions bingo card. So here's what I expect to happen this year. J. Cole and Doechii release a song together. Putin dies. It could have, it could be anybody. Trump, Xi Jinping, whatever. One of the world leaders, old world leaders, will die, but we'll put Putin in there. Historical fires in NorCal, Oregon, and Washington. Jay-Z drops music. Africa tourism surges dramatically. That one I think is almost definitely going to happen. Massive protests in China make it past media blackout curtain. Epstein files leaked unredacted from inside Homeland Security. Gambling becomes the #1 social concern in the U.S. Streamers get woke or go broke. PG Lang introduces a new artist with notoriety, and that doesn't have to be a musician, by the way. New JPEG Mafia album that either goes over really well or really poorly. I've been really wondering what's going to happen when JPEG puts out another album. Massive racial controversy in the free rent fandom, especially over cosplay. I think it's going to keep happening. Of course, the free spaces. Israel continues bombing Gaza. Lockdowns attempted again, but fail. I'm thinking people just don't lock down. Several major bodies of water are reclassified and renamed. This is something that has been happening. We keep changing the definitions of oceans and stuff like that, so that seems very likely. Crisis in Sudan becomes the center of global attention for activism. It is, in fact, the biggest humanitarian crisis, ever. And it doesn't get talked about that much. Megan Thee Stallion drops her most critically acclaimed album to date. That's hopeful. K-pop Demon Hunter sequel teased before end of year. High-profile celebrity suicide sparks mental health conversation. Huge controversy surrounding the release of Grand Theft Auto 6. Ye does something that is discussed heavily for about a week. Major scandal over reveal that more than half of Republican politicians are gay. Nerdcore rappers get the most popular they have ever been. That's wishful thinking for me. Several major game publishers close shop or downscale tremendously. I'm thinking like a Ubisoft or an EA or some really major publisher is just gone this year. And Elon's X is banned in so many countries that he finally kills the site. So yeah, some of these are, I hope it doesn't happen, like the fires. Some of these are definitely wishful thinking, and some of this is inevitable. But we'll see what happens. Also, shout out to channel members: Manuel Rodriguez, Septimus, Gore of a Dream, Mild Monster, Discount, Josh Powling, Ranilla, Goku the Black, Mayday from Space, Sina, Time Fades Away, Theodore Thibault, Vema Luna, Saffron, Internet Weirdo, Andrea, Saxy42, Never Knows Best, Guyo B, The Last Scoot, Dalton Dianos, Queer Code Head, Isabel Incorporated, Theo Ella, Voozle, Heyonkyo, Brody, Ballast, Dr. Hades, Roger Ramos, Arthur Washington, Big Water Fan, Luna Lulu, Crystalline Fos, Zydeas, Zinc, Radio Knights, Brianna W, Baba Gaducius, Pika Pika 2000, Kudere Hime, Spectral, Oh My Guy, Commenter number 456, Spacey Filmer, Your Stuff Is Cool, CC, Plague on Humanity, Denakori, Z-Cypher, Gary Always, Gigadonk, Zerakiel, Zen Huxtable, Duncan264, Gassy Hall, Taperclip, and Night Night. Very happy to see all of you. 59 is a good number. And look forward to some members-only content coming very soon.